So we move on to the next portion of our class, which is presentation. Up until now, we've been doing things verbally, but now we can use visuals. And visual storytelling is a little different than traditional oral storytelling. So today we're going to talk about slides, the kinds of presentations that we do, pitching, and we'll go into more detail on this actually in a later presentation. What makes a good slide? What makes a bad slide? And what are the elements involved? The thing is, a picture can tell 1,000 words, and it really is true. Like when you look at a graph or something like that, you could be looking at thousands of data points. But if you have to look at 1,000 numbers, that'd be very difficult. And it'd also be hard to kind of visualize it all. And so now, by having a picture, you can see it. Visual aids are a lot more powerful than just you speaking. And let's face it, we live in the age of images. I mean, people don't really read anymore. And when you write, it's like in emojis and memes and things like that. And so this is the way people learn now. And so the perception is that when you present, it reflects on you as a presenter. You're going to get greater visuals. Where visual makes a lot of sense is when you have a story to tell that's complex or has data or something like that. You command the structure and the order, meaning since it's one slide after another, what you also end up doing is command the attention of people much more strictly. And when you have a slide set, it becomes a reference point. Like my goal with all my slides is that if you don't use this stuff all the time, you're going to forget it. However, if you need to go back and remember it again, you can always go back to your slides. I hope you're all downloading these. With slides, it's the same as a story. We're trying to relate to people. And at the same time, when you're presenting with slides, you want to educate people. You want to get them to know you. However, it's still about constructing a story. You have the power of making something visual. So what are the most common presentation types? Well, technical presentations like engineers and people like that. And that's mostly you're trying to relay information. The question is, can you make that information as memorable as possible? The next level up are management reviews. And in management reviews, what you're trying to do is tell people that the future looks bright and I'm in control of this and I am going to make this happen. Opportunity reviews are when people compete to pick one idea over another. And so this is about funding, competition. Venture Devils is an opportunity review. And finally, solicitation, meaning somebody's asking, hey, we need this. Everybody put in your applications. And so this is where, what is your goal? Inform, educate, construct. But what it all comes down to is communication is about, maybe I'm not going to get it done in this conversation, but can I keep going? Can I get to the next conversation? Remember, communication is about reducing distance. Bill Murray, I know Bill Murray's one of those guys who could read the weather report and I'll just start laughing. He's just so goofy. But he says to hear stories, you have to live stories. Ultimately, what you write about is your voice. You've seen my style, and I'm a New Jersey guy. We're snarky, sarcastic. However, somewhere in your talks, when you communicate and in your stories, a piece of you needs to come out. And remember, wherever you are comes out in the cars. And this is why when you have an idea, you think maybe somebody else can tell it. But you're still the best person to do this because nobody feels it more than you and nobody cares more than you. And so since you have that core, you have the soul of your idea, then what it comes down to is just getting the technical aspects to support it. Your story's still the same. How do I connect? Does my story flow? And is it smooth? And so what are our values? Still the same three values: pain, logic, and gain. And so when we look at the things that support these primary values, what connects, and one thing that connects over everything is time. Time is a value that connects to everything. When you make slides, you want to storytell like economists. And what do economists do? Economists take great deals of information, and what they do with that information is they look for the patterns. They try to figure out, what story is this telling me right now? And from those stories, they can derive out what's happening in the world. So the first thing they need to do is come up with that story. What is a clear, cohesive way that you can talk about it? Do you have pictures that support what you said? And even better, do you have numbers? Story, picture, numbers. That's how you pitch with slides. So the technical story, basically the end of the story is, what is the point of you telling all this technical stuff? And typically these kind of stories end on a happy ending, or one with hope that you can do something. Now, in terms of your process, are you going through a path of deducing something, inducing something, or abducting something? And what that means is, deduction is when we take, a big idea and keep shrinking it down. That if this is true, then this is true, and this is true. On the other hand, induction is exactly the opposite, meaning we take all the little pieces of data and put it together. So for example, I look at 3 different swans. Therefore, since all these guys are white, then all swans must be white. So you're taking little evidence and making it something bigger. Abduction is when you take data and then you jump to a conclusion. For example, Daisy looks like all these other birds, and all these other birds are swans, therefore Daisy must be a swan. And the thing about abduction is it tends to get a bit abused. People start making jumps that are just way too big. The other thing you look at a lot in this is competition. And so understand who you're going up against. Understand their ideas versus your ideas. Where's the advantage? Where's the disadvantage? And are you telling the right story? Management reviews. Management reviews, they're concerned about the triple constraint, meaning cost, scope, and resources. And they want to know, which of these are going to become issues. Managers tend to be very risk averse. And so they want to know how you're going to go up against the limits that you have. You give an overview and then you give details. These tend to be deduction type presentations. But they want to know what the bottom line is, what's going to happen. And so having contingency plans is really useful because it shows everyone that everything's been thought out. Again, these management reviews, a lot revolves around uncertainty. Opportunity reviews follow a progression. First, I have to make you care about what I'm doing. Then I need to make you believe that I can actually do this. And finally, I need you to join up. The big thing is the pace has to be brisk. Now, here's the problem with creative people. You love everything, and you want all your ideas to come out. And the problem is it comes out as a shotgun blast. It comes out too unorganized. And this is why I keep repeating the words, word economy, word economy. Anyway, what you need to do in this process is if you have too much information, make them backup slides. And what happens is that if people ask questions, then you can pull them up then. What's key to this is, do you know your audience? Do you know the stakeholders? And when you talk about different opportunities, are you covering the entire scope of the ideas? And in business, marketing, product, and executive strategy. That's what all business boils down to. What if I'm trying to solicit something? JFK solicited the country's help in supporting us going to the moon. And so being memorable is a very big part of this. What story do you want to tell? Do you want to be classic? Do you want to take them on a specific journey? And to some level, you need to help provide the information. Be energetic, be animated. However, be careful because mistakes get amplified. And so, on the other hand, you might need to take some chances. Now, the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch means in a minute, can I tell what my idea is? And that's that you need to find an opening of just 1 or 2 sentences where you catch their interest. The reality is you never run into anybody in an elevator. But also, though, when you give an explanation to someone, they want it to be short, get to the point. I need to connect to a value. And then it comes down to how well can I communicate? These are the elements that go into a pitch deck. Now, here's the thing about these slides. They don't have to go in this order. This is the traditional order, but it's your story. Where does it make sense? For example, team is down here. Well, what if your venture is all about team and people? So maybe it should come up here, even before the problem, where you talk about the people that you're bringing in and how powerful they are. And then you say, and they're going to solve this. Again, it's the order of your story. Here's one of the big mistakes students make about slides. Every slide should tell a story. If it doesn't tell a story, then you have to use writer's discipline and ask yourself, why is this in here? There has to be a point to your slide. It has to be self-contained. What are some of the elements that go into slides? How do you lay it out? Your eye lines, meaning when your eyes look at a page, it tends to form an F pattern. You go down the side, and you also look along the top, and you look along the middle. This is where primarily my eye lines are going to go. Then guess where some of your principal information has to be? Your fonts matters. What primary words? In a slide, you should only have about 5 primary words. And primary words mean if I glance at that slide, I know what the 5 words and points are. What colors you pick, like for example, these colors, they're like god-awful, aren't they? They're so muted. And maybe this is what they wanted. Spacing. Make sure, like, this is totally cluttered. This is a horrible slide. However, it makes its point. And then contrasting lettering and background also matter. A lot of people like to put pictures in the backgrounds, but the problem is they can become too cluttered if they take away from it. Colors have different meanings. For example, we associate feminine with being pink, black, power, purple, royalty, red, anger. Guy Kawasaki is kind of like the guru of slide making. And he had something called the 10-20-30 rule, meaning if you're pitching, count on getting through 10 slides. You've got 20 minutes and you have a 30-point font. A lot of people break this and don't use 30-point fonts. The thing is, how do you stay under the necessary number of words? Don't use fonts with fillets. And the reason why is your brain has to spend just a little bit of extra energy to figure out what those letters are. And so fillets or serifs tend to distract. Not only that, but if you're sitting in the back of the room, it makes it harder to read something. And so Calibri and Helvetica are typically the most common fonts used because they're so clean. But see, this is what I mean by serifs or fillets. You see in Times New Roman, this is classic. The problem also is that the line widths are inconsistent. So from far away, thinner lines look even thinner, thicker lines even look thicker. And so here are, people like to get cute with their fonts. Don't do it. You have to understand how to communicate. How far can you take fonts? What impression do you want to leave them? Don't use bullet points. If I see bullet points, bullet points is the domain of people who are a little bit lazy. And actually, most of the Fulton professors use bullet points. And oh my God, I was watching one presentation by the dean and I thought, God, there's more bullets here than the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. The method of loci means that we remember relationships, the way we arrange things. How do things flow? And finally, visualization of color, font size, and all matters. We want to get people's attention. We want to demonstrate power, strengthen our slides. And also we want to be biased. This is a case of we want everybody to look at our point of view. This is the one case where it's okay to have biases. Here's an example of good graphics and bad graphics. So NASA, this is actually a slide from a NASA presentation. And so the space people want more money. And what they're saying is that the earth science people have a 41% increase. So they've been getting these big raises. They're taking money away from us. But look at all the words on this thing. And not only that, you put light blue on dark blue. And plus you have these numerical increases in here and everything. This is just a flat out ugly slide. Their competition, what was their slide? This. Very simple story. This story, a lot of explanation. This story, this is how much NASA spends. We're only asking for about 10% of the entire budget, and this is about taking care of the planet. And so they just said, hey, maybe we need to spend a little bit more on Earth because the boatload of money we have is going into space. And so simple story, simple slide. That's what you want. Creating biases. If you look at this, you think it's a slow climb. You are allowed to change the scales. All of a sudden this, same data, but showing a bias. Color backgrounds matter. For example, you look at this, purple on gray. What a horrible combination. On the other hand, I can also rearrange it. Plus this up, down. What am I getting out of that? Same thing, and plus, it makes my point. Because my point is that we can make a lot more money if we spend more money on retention. There's a company called Charter, whose entire business is about taking data and turning them into graphical stories. And so the bottom line on this, it's about search. Yeah, you have all these words, but these are the most important words. And so those are the primary words. And it backs it up that Google, in terms of its business, the lion's share is still about search. And so the bias and showing of it. Don't use full sentences. You don't have to. For example, you could say, we will have the task completed by deadline Tuesday. Or it's okay just to say, done by Tuesday's deadline. Yeah, like archery cracks me up. Phrasing. Here's an example of a title slide. We were doing a solar company, Energaia. Where we came up with the name of Energaia is we were thinking, we're a solar company, so we're looking at Hilo and solar, and everybody's taken all the names. So what do? You start looking at foreign words. And so we started looking at energy, and then we found out the word for energy in Italian is energia. So we said, Gia, Gaia, Earth Mother. Yeah, people love that crap. let's come up with that name, Energaia. And what is our branding line? Power for the planet. And so we thought this visual expresses what we're about. Now, if you notice, what color is Energaia? Green. This is what I mean by in terms of writer's discipline. And that's, there has to be a reason for everything. And you have to also have your information on your cover slide. But when you have your cover slide, you don't necessarily have to read off the slide or something like that. And you can use it to tell a little story about your company and what it's about. And so in terms of other title slides, this one right away, you know, it has something to do with fraternities. This one is a little risky because by saying we're bookings.com for boats, yes, it makes you very understandable, and then you've also pigeonholed what you can be. Now, the color scheme on this is awful, but here are the primary words. Buying a car sucks. Now, we have much more than 5 words here, but the point is, what are the primary words? What is the point to this slide? And the slide does tell a story, and people can relate to this. And so someone only has to talk about this. They don't need to read off this, and that's one of the biggest mistakes people make with their slides. Again, this is really only a 4-word slide, meaning we reverse process. Well, maybe 5 words, dealers and you. And so it's all about you. In terms of the business model, this is straightforward. This is what the market opportunity, this many restaurants, that's how much per cafe, and it comes out to this. This one is tough. This one is tough because when you have websites or something, people don't understand it. And so you have to explain the features. But as you go through this, you don't have to read it point by point. You can make a story out of these points. People can access experts to find out about cycling. And we have competitions for people where they have prizes and earn discounts. They can log their trips online and share it with others, and they can track stats of how they're doing, figure out routes, and this competition is a good way to meet family and friends. And so all of a sudden, I've described that entire messy slide in under 1 minute. And so here's some more examples of what they use for go-to-market. Competition. The big thing is you need to show something why you're better. And so I'll show you a much better slide than this. Telling the story about people. Having their pictures. Like, this is a huge mistake. Because when you have pictures of people, it humanizes it. Some go horizontally across, some go vertically down. But you have to tell a story about these people because they're people, and these are the people who are going to pull off this company. Timelines need to be nice and clean. Why do you need a timeline? Because I want to know what you're going to do. Anything project-based has got to have a timeline in it. And so talking about the milestones and where they're going to be, how you grow. When you end a talk, there has to be a call to action, meaning you want them to do something. What direction are you going to push them in? And so here, this is the ask. This is how much money they want, and this is how they're going to spend it. Now, in terms of making these slides, and you've seen my slides, did I ever pay for any of those? No. What I do is there's all kinds of free templates out there. I just kept copying templates, and now I have my own little database. Also, take advantage of animation, and you see me use animation a lot. For those of you who use PowerPoint, they have some standard shapes. Some of these you might recognize because I've used them before. How does it flow? That one point has to flow into another. Again, business plans, flexible tool, business model canvas. I've highlighted what the keywords are on here. A few principal words. You can replace bullets with just 3D, like this would typically be a bullet, but you can make this 3D. Here's the other power of slides and using graphics though. When you look at something graphically, you can figure out what's up there. If it's in bullet point, you have to sit down and read through it all, and you may not remember what's up there, so you're just going to stand up there and read off the slide. And I've seen plenty of people do that, and that's just an awful talk. In terms of using smart samples, if there's a lot of things that need to be on it, you can separate it, make boundaries. And so the key here is to pick a light color, just dark enough, so everything looks separated. Like if this was black or if this was a red color, this slide will look awfully busy. So there's tiling of slides. You can go horizontal, go vertical. Notice I'm using animation. What they used to do is like cover things up and then slowly reveal it. Well, that's what animation's for. You can change font colors if there's something you really, really want to emphasize. You can change font sizes. You can use bolding. So as you can see, there's quite a bit in fonts that you can do. And your fonts actually complement what you do verbally. Journey summary, summaries, some kind of line that they can follow. You're trying to get to the next meeting. And so you need to connect, you need to impress, and you need to interact. Here's a interesting reality about you physically. 80 to 90% of your brain process comes through your eyes. Because when you think about the levels of colors and everything else and the number of pixels, 2/3 of your brain activity is about your eyes. And this is why they say, oh, we only use 10% of our brains to think. Well, the only reason why we get 10% is 90% has got to, run things, make sure we're alive, and monitor things, and take care of things through our eyes. 65% of our conversations center on stories, and conversations cause connections. There's something called neural coupling, and that processes will tend to mirror each other when you center on stories. Here's an example of a bullet point. Pretty ugly. Same exact slide by putting in a little graphics, and you can say what the point is much more easily. The method of loci means that things are connected. For example, you may not know the name of streets. I know I don't. On the other hand, you can tell people, okay, so when you go to the second light, there's an Albertsons on the corner, and you make a left. Take that all the way down to the stop sign. And it's just like if somebody said, I'm outside a round building, where am I? And so you can go, because of the method of loci, you may not remember what each street is, but you remember how things are oriented. This is what I meant by we look at things in pattern. This is called a heat map, meaning where you look at something the most. It's called an F pattern. The thing is, I tend to data dump you, and so I tend to be less interactive. But the reason why I can get away with it is because, again, a lot of color, a lot of animation, and therefore that takes the place of me physically doing movements. Here's one thing to think about design. Everybody says it's about symmetry, symmetry, symmetry. No, it is not about symmetry. It's about balance. Look at how beautiful this is. The thing is, her line is straight, but her weight is balanced, and this is why she can lean back. Shapes have a dynamic that you put on a screen. If you have a rectangle, it flows this way. If you have a circle, people think circles are static. No, they're not. Circles are radial when you look at them. And it's actually squares that are the most static. And so this gets into the writer's discipline, that when you make slides or something like that, when you look at it, what is the point to everything in the slide? For example, all those other slides had color backgrounds. This one is white. And why is it white? Simplicity. Not only that, for this one, none of the colors are filled inside. These are all line drawings. And so that's the impact I want to make. Now, what you want to learn how to do is make impact slides, gotcha slides. And so when you do a presentation, think about the slides. And those gotcha slides are actually primary points, have a big impact. In this one, this is the cost of what solar is. And this is us. And all of a sudden you see us way, way down here compared to everyone else. And that's a gotcha. The big thing is these slides leave a lasting impression. When you give a presentation, it's about an advantage. The question is, are you pressing it? Here's another gotcha slide. This is from me starting a solar company. This is a solar production line. As you can see, it's pretty huge. And what these things are, these clusters, are actually material deposition systems. And we are offering a new kind of system. And they would only take up this much space. And so we only need this much space to replace all of this. So you have a much less sophisticated system and a smaller line. And to get a feel for how much less in size is, there's a human being. This is my gotcha slide. You don't notice him. He's wearing a gray. I didn't notice him the first time. But when you look at that, you go, wow. And you see really how big these systems are. When you summarize something, the best kind of graphic is some kind of pathway. So you can use lines, roller coasters, rivers, all different kinds of ways to end your talk. For those of you who are TEM majors, you're going to be doing a lot of slides. The thing is, I see a lot of bad slides. Adhere to these rules. Your ability to make good slides is related to you being a good storyteller.